Just tell me what happened. We know you were there. I don't know anything.
Where were you on the night of the 15th?
I don't remember. Where were you?
I was at home.
Be precise.
Police rarely ask questions because they don't know the answer. They ask questions because they want to shape it. When someone hears the same question again and again, they assume confusion. They think the officer didn't understand. They believe clarification will help. That belief is a trap. Repetition is not curiosity. It is pressure. The first time police ask a question, it feels normal. What happened? Where were you? What did you do next? The second time, it feels strange. The third time, it feels uncomfortable. By the fourth time, it feels dangerous. Most people don't notice when the shift happens. They just feel it. They start wondering, did I say something wrong? Did they misunderstand me? Should I explain it better? That moment is where control changes hands. Police are trained to use repetition to create self-doubt, not because you are lying, but because doubt weakens consistency. Consistency is the most important thing in the legal system, not truth. Truth changes. Memory shifts. Understanding improves. The system punishes all of that. When police repeat a question, they are not looking for a new answer. They are watching how your answer changes. Even small changes matter. A pause, a different word, a reordered detail. To a human, that is normal. To the system, it is evidence. The first answer you give becomes a baseline. Every answer after that is compared to it, not for accuracy, for alignment. This is why police often return to the same moment, the same minute, the same detail. Tell me again what happened when you arrived. They already heard it. They want to hear it again, not to understand. To measure, repetition increases stress. Stress alters memory. Under pressure, the human brain simplifies. It fills gaps. It guesses. And guessing creates variation. Police are trained to stay calm while you grow uncomfortable. They sit back. They nod. They wait. Silence after repetition is intentional. Silence forces you to speak. Most people respond by adding more detail. They try to be clearer, more precise. That is the worst thing you can do. More detail means more opportunities to differ later. Police do not interrupt repetition. They encourage it. Take your time. Walk me through it again. Start from the beginning. This sounds reasonable. It is not. Every retelling rewrites memory. Human memory is not a recording. It is reconstruction. Each time you recall an event, you slightly change it. Police know this. The system depends on this. Repetition is how natural memory becomes legal inconsistency. This is why police rarely ask, "Is that accurate?" They ask, "Are you sure?" That question plants doubt. Once doubt exists, answers drift. Drift is dangerous. Drift creates gaps. Gaps create suspicion. Suspicion creates leverage. And leverage creates cases. Most innocent people fail here, not because they lie, but because they try to be helpful. They believe repeating the story will make it clearer. It makes it weaker. Police are not listening for facts. They are listening for changes. The moment your answer changes, even slightly, the system marks it. From that moment forward, the question is no longer neutral. It becomes a test. And every test is designed to fail humans. This is why repetition feels exhausting. Fatigue increases agreement. Fatigue increases mistakes. Fatigue increases compliance. Police do not need to rush. They outlast. And repetition is their most effective tool. The more you talk, the more the system learns how to use you. This is not about bad officers. This is about a system built to extract consistency from imperfect humans. And repetition is how it does it. By the time you realize what's happening, you've already answered too many times. And each answer lives forever. That is why police ask the same question again and again. Not because they don't know, but because they are waiting for you to change. Repetition feels harmless. That is why it works. When police repeat a question, they do not raise their voice. They do not threaten. They do not accuse. They simply ask again. This is intentional. Curiosity sounds friendly. Pressure sounds hostile. Repetition sounds neutral, and neutrality lowers defenses. Most people assume repeated questions mean the officer is confused. They think clarification will help. It won't. Repetition is not about understanding. It is about erosion. Each time a question is repeated, something weakens. First, confidence weakens. You begin to doubt your own memory. You wonder if you missed something. Then certainty weakens. You stop speaking decisively. You hedge. You soften language. I think, maybe, I'm not sure. These words feel honest. Legally, they're dangerous. Police are trained to notice this shift. They do not stop repetition when you answer well. They stop when you answer differently. Repetition is a filter. It removes confidence. It removes clarity. It removes resistance. What remains is variability. And variability is what the system wants. Police are not looking for lies. They are looking for changes. A lie stays consistent. A human memory does not. This is why repetition targets innocent people more than guilty ones. Guilty people rehearse. Innocent people recall. Recalling is unstable. Memory is rebuilt every time it is accessed. Each retelling slightly alters it. Police understand this. They create opportunities for memory to change. They revisit the same moment, the same action, the same detail, not because it matters, but because it moves. A time becomes earlier. A distance becomes shorter. A pause becomes longer. These shifts feel insignificant. In court, they are not. Repetition also creates comparison. The first answer becomes a reference point. Every answer after that is measured against it, not against reality, against the record. Police reports do not capture the first answer fully. They capture what supports structure. The rest is noise. When repetition reveals difference, police do not correct it. They highlight it. So earlier you said, but now you're saying. This framing changes a room. Suddenly, you are not explaining. You are defending. Defense implies accusation. Once accusation exists, neutrality disappears. Another hidden effect of repetition is fatigue. Repetition takes time. Time drains energy. Energy loss increases mistakes. Police know they can wait longer than you. They are on duty. You are under stress. Time favors institutions. As repetition continues, people begin to simplify answers. They shorten. They generalize. They reduce detail. This feels safer. It is not. Simplification removes nuance. Nuance protects context. Without nuance, answers become blunt. Blunt answers are easier to attack. Police do not rush repetition. They pace it. They allow you to believe the interview is ending. Then they return to an earlier question. This creates false relief. Relief lowers guard. Lower guard means less precision. Less precision means more variation. Repetition also creates self-surveillance. You start monitoring yourself. You think about how you sound. You try to stay consistent. That effort increases stress. Stress worsens recall. The harder you try to be consistent, the more likely you are to fail. Police do not need to accuse you of lying. They let repetition do the work. Eventually, the room changes. You feel scrutinized, measured, tested, even if no one says out loud. At that point, the question is no longer about facts. It is about survival. People speak differently when they feel judged. Their voice changes. Their posture changes. Their timing changes. All of this is noticed. All of it becomes part of the record. Repetition is how neutrality turns into suspicion without accusation. It is quiet. It is legal. It is effective. This is why repetition is used so carefully. It looks fair. It feels patient. But it is one of the strongest tools in the room because it forces humans to do what humans do worst under pressure. Remember perfectly. And perfection is not human. That is why police ask the same question again and again, not to learn more, but to wait for change. Contradictions do not require lies. They require time. Most people believe contradictions come from dishonesty. In reality, they come from repetition. The first time you answer a question, you answer instinctively. You rely on memory. You rely on feeling. You rely on what stands out. The second time, you try to be accurate. You think back. You fill gaps. The third time, you try to be consistent. You remember what you said before, not what actually happened. That shift is critical. You stop recalling the event. You start recalling your last answer. This is how contradictions are created without intention. Police understand this progression. They allow it to unfold naturally. They repeat questions with slight changes. What time did you arrive? When did you get there? About how late was it when you showed up? These questions sound similar. They are not. Each version pulls memory in a different direction. Time is elastic in memory. Stress stretches it. A moment can feel longer. A wait can feel shorter. When asked again, your brain adjusts. You do not notice the adjustment. The system does. Police are trained to capture these adjustments. They do not argue. They document. A few minutes become meaningful. A few steps become suspicious. Another way repetition creates contradiction is order. What did you do first? And after that? Before that, where were you? Reordering events forces reconstruction. Reconstruction is unstable. Each reconstruction creates a slightly different sequence. Police are not confused by this. They are waiting for it. Once the order changes, suspicion appears. Not because the change matters, because it exists. Another invisible contradiction comes from language. Words are not fixed. People use synonyms. Car becomes vehicle. Quickly becomes right away. Later becomes after a while. These changes feel harmless. In legal records, they are differences. Differences become discrepancies. Discrepancies undermine credibility. Police do not need major contradictions. They need small ones. Small contradictions are harder to explain. A big lie can be challenged. A small inconsistency looks human, and human inconsistency is suspicious in court. Another contradiction comes from emotion. At first, you speak calmly. Later, you feel judged. Your tone changes. Tone is not recorded well. Words remain. Emotion disappears. A calm statement followed by a tense one looks defensive. Defensiveness looks guilty, even when it is not. Repetition also creates contradiction through emphasis. What you emphasize shifts over time. At first, you mention what feels important. Later, you mention what you think matters to them. That shift changes the story. Police mark that change. So earlier you focused on this, but now you're talking about that. This framing makes change look intentional. It rarely is. Police do not accuse you of lying. They let the contradictions speak. Once contradictions exist, everything else changes. Your answers are no longer information. They are explanations. Explanations are defensive. Defensiveness changes behavior. Behavior is observed. At this stage, repetition stops being neutral. It becomes targeted. Police return to the same point. Again and again, they isolate the contradiction. They repeat the question until the difference widens. Not by force, by patience. Most people try to fix contradictions. They explain more. They add detail. They justify. This makes the problem worse. More words mean more variation. More variation means more contradiction. Police do not stop you. They let the pattern grow. Eventually, the contradiction becomes a story, not the event. At that point, what happened matters less than how it changed. The system does not punish lies. It punishes instability. Repetition is how instability is revealed. Without accusations, without pressure, without visible force. Just time and questions. That is why innocent people are confused later. They say, "I never lied." The system replies, "You changed." And in court, change is enough. That is how repetition creates contradictions without lies. And why the same question is never just a question. Repetition does not break guilty people first. It breaks innocent ones. This feels backward, but it is consistent. Guilty people expect suspicion. They prepare for it. They rehearse. They simplify. Innocent people do not. Innocent people rely on memory. They rely on honesty. They rely on logic. All three are fragile under repetition. When police repeat questions, innocent people assume something went wrong. They believe clarity will fix it, so they talk more. Talking more feels helpful. It is not. Guilty people often say less. They limit details. They avoid elaboration. Innocent people expand. They explain context. They add nuance. They clarify emotions. Nuance is human. The system does not like it. Nuance creates variability. Variability creates risk. This is why innocent people fail first. They are cooperative. They are open. They are reactive. Police repetition rewards none of these traits. Another reason innocent people fail is confidence erosion. At first, they speak clearly. They know what happened. After repetition, doubt creeps in. They start questioning themselves. Did I remember that right? Was it earlier or later? Did I already say that? That self-questioning changes answers. Police do not cause doubt directly. They allow repetition to do it. Innocent people also care about fairness. They assume police want the truth. They assume truth will be recognized. This assumption is dangerous. The system does not reward effort. It rewards alignment. Another weakness of innocence is emotion. Innocent people feel frustration, confusion, fear. Emotion leaks into speech. Their tone shifts. Their pacing changes. Their emphasis moves. These shifts are recorded. Later, when emotion is gone, words remain. Calm testimony compared to stress statements looks suspicious, even when it is not. Innocent people also try to correct themselves. They notice small errors. They want to fix them. Correction feels responsible. Legally, correction looks inconsistent. Police do not discourage correction. They encourage it. They return to corrected points repeatedly. Each revisit increases difference. Difference becomes focus. Another factor is time pressure. Innocent people want resolution. They want to leave. They want closure. Repetition delays resolution. Delay increases impatience. Impatience leads to shortcuts. Shortcuts lead to vague answers. Vagueness leads to suspicion. Guilty people often accept delay. They expect it. Innocent people resist it. This resistance shows. Police notice resistance. They do not respond to it. They record it. Another reason innocence fails is belief inconsistency. Innocent people believe, if I just stick to the truth, I'll be fine. But truth is not fixed in memory. The truth you remember today is shaped by yesterday's questions. Repetition reshapes memory. Innocent people do not realize this is happening. They believe they are repeating the same story. They are not. They are repeating a modified version. Police repetition accelerates this process. The more you repeat, the less original the memory becomes. Eventually, you are no longer describing the event. You are describing your description. At that point, innocence is no protection. The system is not evaluating guilt. It is evaluating stability. And stability under repetition is rare, especially for people who never expected to be tested. This is why repetition is dangerous. It does not target lies. It targets humanity. And humanity fails quietly. Innocent people are not trapped by what they did. They are trapped by how they tried to explain it. Repetition turns cooperation into vulnerability, and vulnerability into evidence. That is why innocent people fail first. Not because they are weak, but because they are human. Human memory was never designed for interrogation. It was designed for survival. Memory prioritizes meaning, not precision. Under normal conditions, this works. Under pressure, it collapses. Police repetition exploits this weakness. When a question is repeated, the brain does not retrieve a file. It reconstructs an experience. Reconstruction is fragile. Each reconstruction alters the memory slightly. Stress accelerates this process. During questioning, stress hormones rise. Heart rate increases. Attention narrows. The brain shifts from recall to defense. Details fade. Confidence drops. What remains are impressions. Impressions feel true. They are not stable. When police ask the same question again, the brain searches for certainty. Certainty does not exist, so the brain fills gaps. It guesses. It smooths timelines. It simplifies sequences. These guesses feel logical. Later, they look inconsistent. Police are trained to create environments where memory struggles. Bright lights, silence, unfamiliar rooms. All of these reduce cognitive flexibility. When cognitive flexibility drops, memory rigidity increases. Rigid memories break under pressure. Another effect of repetition is source confusion. The brain forgets whether a detail came from the event or from a previous answer. After several repetitions, people remember what they said, not what happened. This is dangerous because now the memory is anchored to language, and language is unstable. Police repetition forces the brain to choose between two tasks: remember accurately or remain consistent. Most people choose consistency. They try to remember what they said before. This creates performance anxiety. Performance anxiety worsens recall. The harder you try to stay consistent, the less accurate you become. Police notice when this shift happens. They increase repetition. More repetition means more pressure. More pressure means more memory distortion. Another collapse happens with time estimation. Humans are terrible at estimating time under stress. Minutes stretch. Seconds disappear. Repeated questions about time force approximations. Approximations change. Small changes become suspicious. Police are not confused by this. They expect it. They are not testing truth. They are testing resilience. Memory under pressure is not resilient. Another failure occurs with sequencing. Repetition forces reordering. Reordering weakens memory links. Weak links create gaps. Gaps invite interpretation. Interpretation becomes evidence. Police do not need memory to fail completely. They need it to wobble. A wobble is enough. The system does not ask, is this normal under stress? It asks, why did it change? Change without explanation looks intentional. Intent implies guilt. This is why repetition is effective. It turns natural memory failure into legal suspicion, not by force, not by threat, but by time and pressure. Memory is not lying. It is adapting. The system does not accept adaptation. It demands rigidity from a flexible organ. This mismatch is exploited. Police repetition is the tool. Innocent people are the victims, not because they forget, but because forgetting is human, and the system is not. Repetition does not stay inside the interview room. It follows you into the case. Police do not use repetition only to question. They use it to build evidence. Legally, quietly, effectively. When the same question is asked multiple times, police are creating a record, not of facts, but of variation. Variation is legally valuable. The law does not require police to prove you lied. They only need to show your story changed. Change suggests unreliability. Unreliability weakens credibility. Weak credibility strengthens the case against you. Police reports do not say, the suspect was under pressure. They say, the suspect gave inconsistent answers. That phrasing matters. Inconsistent is a legal keyword. It signals doubt. Once doubt exists, the system adjusts its posture. Investigators stop asking open questions. They start asking targeted ones. Questions that assume a version of events. So, when you came back later, you already said you were there before. Each assumption is based on repetition. And once assumptions enter the record, they are treated as facts. Police repetition also creates comparison evidence. Statements from different moments are placed side by side. Time gaps disappear. Context disappears. Only contrast remains. Contrast is persuasive. A prosecutor does not need to explain why answers changed. They only need to show that they did. Judges and juries are not trained in memory science. They are trained in consistency. Consistency feels honest. Change feels deceptive. Police know this. This is why repetition is documented carefully, not as harassment, not as pressure, but as diligence. The report will say, the subject was asked again for clarification. Clarification sounds fair, but the outcome is leverage. Police also use repetition to lock timelines. Early answers become anchors. Later answers are tied to them. If a detail shifts, the anchor stays. The shift becomes suspicious. This allows police to argue intent. Why would this change unless? Intent does not need proof. It needs suggestion. Repetition provides that suggestion. Another legal use of repetition is elimination of alternatives. When answers change, police stop exploring other possibilities. They focus on the one that fits best. This is confirmation bias. Repetition feeds it. Once a theory forms, evidence is interpreted through it. Contradictions are seen as guilt. Consistency is seen as planning. Either way, the subject loses. Police repetition also influences charging decisions. Prosecutors review reports, not interviews. They see summaries. They see contrasts. They see highlighted differences. They do not see pressure. Based on repetition-based inconsistencies, charges appear justified, even when physical evidence is weak. Words fill gaps. Another legal function of repetition is impeachment. If a case goes to trial, earlier statements are saved. They wait months later when testimony happens. Those repeated answers return. A single change word can be used to attack credibility. So earlier you said, but today you're saying, the jury hears change. They do not hear exhaustion. They do not hear confusion. They hear inconsistency. Police repetition creates future weapons, weapons that activate long after the interview ends. This is why lawyers fear early statements, not because they are wrong, but because they are premature. Premature words are unstable. Unstable words become legal liabilities. Repetition is how instability is captured. Cleanly, legally, on paper. Police do not need force. They need patience. They need time. And they need you to keep talking. Every repeated question is an invitation to change. And every change strengthens the system's position. That is how repetition becomes evidence, not through coercion, but through design. By the time a case reaches court, repetition has already done its work. Judges do not hear questions. They hear answers. They do not see pressure. They see records. The courtroom is far removed from the interview room. There are no harsh lights, no long silences, no hours of repetition. What arrives in court is clean, organized, typed, and that presentation is powerful. Judges are trained to trust documents. Documents feel objective, stable, final. People do not. When a judge reads a police report, they assume the process was fair. The report says, the subject was asked again for clarification. Clarification sounds reasonable. It does not sound like pressure. Judges are not shown how many times a question was asked. They are not shown the pauses, the fatigue, the hesitation. They see the outcome, not the process. This is where repetition becomes invisible. A judge compares answers. They look for consistency. Consistency is treated as credibility. Change is treated as unreliability. The law does not ask, why did this person's answers evolve? It asks, why did they change? That framing assumes stability as a default. Human memory is not stable. Courts operate as if it is. This mismatch harms innocent people. Another courtroom effect of repetition is narrative framing. Prosecutors present statements in sequence. Early answer, later answer. They pause. They let the difference speak. No explanation is required. The implication is enough. Judges are not trained in interrogation psychology. They are trained in procedure. Procedure values consistency. This is why repetition works so well legally. It produces inconsistencies that look procedural, not psychological. Another issue is time. Court cases take months, sometimes years. Memory improves with distance. Clarity returns. But earlier statements do not update. When testimony differs from early repetition-based answers, the court sees deception, not growth. Another courtroom problem is selective quotation. Only certain answers are repeated. The ones that differ, answers that remain consistent, are rarely highlighted. This creates an illusion of instability. Judges and juries never see the full picture. They see highlights. Highlights are chosen by those with incentives. Repetition also affects credibility rulings. If a judge believes a witness is unreliable, everything else they say is discounted. This is devastating. Even strong evidence is questioned, all because of earlier repetition. Another legal consequence is reduced sympathy. Inconsistency makes people uncomfortable. Jurors associate with dishonesty. They stop listening. They assume manipulation. Police repetition creates this outcome without accusation. It lets the court reach the conclusion on its own. This feels fair. It is not. The system rewards answers that never change. Humans cannot provide that under pressure. This gap is never explained to juries. They are not told. Repeated questioning alters memory. They are told. The story changed, and change is enough. This is why lawyers work to suppress statements. They understand how repetition looks in court, not how it feels. By the time a judge sees the case, the damage is complete. The interview is over. The record is closed. Repetition has already shaped the outcome. This is why courts rarely question how answers were obtained. They focus on what exists. And repetition ensures something always exists. That is how repeated questions become courtroom weapons. Silent, invisible, effective. Repetition only works if you participate. That is the truth most people never hear. Police cannot force your memory to collapse. They can only invite it to. Every repeated question is an invitation to adjust, to clarify, to improve. That instinct feels natural. It feels cooperative. It feels safe. Legally, it is none of those things. The system does not protect accuracy. It protects consistency. And consistency is not a human strength under pressure. The safest answer under repetition is not a better answer. It is fewer answers. Silence interrupts repetition. When you stop responding, the pattern breaks. No new variation is created. No new comparison exists. The system loses momentum. This is why silence is discouraged. Police will say, "We're just trying to understand." This helps clear things up. If you've got nothing to hide, these statements are psychological tools, not legal obligations. The law does not require you to be helpful. It allows you to be protected. Protection begins when repetition ends. Another way to defend against repetition is timing. Words spoken early carry the most risk. Before arrest, before clarity, before counsel. Repetition targets this window. It drains energy before resistance forms. This is why lawyers advise against early statements. Not because truth is dangerous, but because timing is. Once counsel is present, repetition changes. Questions become formal. Pacing slows. Pressure decreases. Repetition loses its edge. The system prefers to speak before that moment. That is why the same question is asked again and again, early, quietly, patiently, to extract instability before protection arrives. Another truth most people miss. You are not being judged in the interview room. You are being recorded. Judgment comes later, from people who were not there, from people who do not feel the pressure. They will see your answers, not the repetition. This is why preventing unstable answers matters more than explaining them later. You cannot explain away inconsistency. The system does not reward explanations. It rewards patterns. And repetition creates patterns automatically. The most dangerous moment is when you realize something feels wrong. That moment often comes too late, because by then, repetition has already done its work. The safest move is not to fight repetition. It is to avoid feeding it. You do not win by answering better. You win by answering less. This does not mean refusing rudely. It means choosing control. Control over when. Control over how. Control over who is present. Repetition removes control. Silence restores it. The system understands this. That is why it resists silence. Not because the silence hides guilt, but because silence blocks leverage. Remember this. The same question is never about information. It is about pressure. And pressure only works if you respond. Once you see repetition for what it is, you stop seeing it as harmless. You recognize it as design. A design built to expose human weakness, not to discover truth. Truth does not need repetition. Pressure does. That is why police ask the same question again and again, not because they forgot the answer, but because they are waiting for it to change. And the moment it does, the system moves forward. Quietly, legally, permanently.